This is the first meeting of the Redistricting Advisory Commission. I'm Lucinda Williams, I'm your city clerk. I'm going to walk you through the very beginning of this meeting until we get a chair, and then I'm going to pawn all the work off on whoever that is. To start the meeting off, we'll call to order at, like we were joking, 6:05. And if I could ask our interpreters to come to the podium and make their announcements that they're here to assist with languages.
Barlow Certified Court Interpreter in the Vietnamese Language. Kính thưa quý vị, tôi tên là Lưu Ngọc Bảo. Tôi là thông dịch viên hữu thể tiếng Việt. Nếu quý vị nào cần sự giúp đỡ của chúng tôi, cho chúng tôi biết chúng tôi có những cái dụng cụ ở đây để giúp cho quý vị. Cảm ơn quý vị. Thank you very much.
Buenas tardes a todos, soy Nancy. Voy a asistirle con interpretación español. Si hay alguien que necesita interpretación en español, por favor háganos saber. Tenemos al equipo para ustedes. Gracias y buenas noches.
안녕하십니까. 오늘 구획개정자문위원회에서는 한국어 통역을 제공합니다. 그렇기 때문에 통역이 필요하시면 동시 통역이 제공되니까 반드시 저희한테 말씀을 주시면 그러면 헤드폰을 가져가셔서 동시 통역을 들으실 수 있습니다. 감사합니다.
Helen Hall, Mandarin Interpreter. 你好，我是中文翻译，我会在第3号台讲话，谢谢。
Thank you very much. And if we do have folks that want to take advantage of the language assistance, we also have what I call the UN equipment, the whisper equipment, that people can use the headsets and the transmitters, and they will get real-time translation of the meeting. Sorry, interpretation. I know that's a big deal in your world. Okay, let's do roll call. We'll just do it alphabetically. So, I should have reminded you also this is recorded. So make sure you turn your microphones on when you're speaking from the dais, and please speak into the microphone, especially if you're wearing a mask, because it gets a little hard to hear. And people at home want to hear everything you have to say. So we will start at the far end with Commissioner Kitty Jaramillo.
Kitty Jaramillo, here.
Yes. James Lira.
Here.
Greg Seaborn.
Here.
John Seminara.
Here.
And Jody Vallejo. Here. Thank you. Everyone is present. And one other piece of business, if you could all stand, and we're going to do the oath of office and make you official. Not you guys. Sorry. You can if you want to stretch.
I can stand if they want.
Sorry, just the folks at the dais, but you can all join in if you want. If you raise your right hand and repeat after me, I state your name,
I, Greg Seaborn,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation,
or purpose of evasion,
purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Thank you, and hopefully that's the hardest thing you'll do tonight. So, and I'm going to come collect those.
Kitty, you want to slide that?
Okay, a little more talking from me, and then hopefully we'll have a chair, and then you get to do the work. So we are at the part of the agenda where we need to select a chair and a vice chair. In the staff report, I outlined the process for selecting the chair and vice chair. You can take nominations, either nominate yourself or someone else on the committee to serve as chair. And then when all the nominations are in, we'll do a vote, and you will name the nominee that you are supportive of if there's more than one nominee. So we will open the floor to nominations.
I would like to nominate Mr. Greg Seaborn as chairman.
I would like to nominate Kitty Jaramillo, please.
I would like to second Greg Seaborn.
Okay, we actually don't need a second for nominations, but appreciated nonetheless. Are there any other nominations? Okay, I'm going to call, we'll just do alphabetical again, and then you can state the person that you are selecting for chair. And we'll start with Kitty Jaramillo.
Greg Seaborn.
Thank you. And James Lira, and please don't forget to turn your mics on.
Greg Seaborn.
Greg Seaborn.
Greg Seaborn.
John Seminara.
Greg Seaborn.
And Jody Vallejo.
And one for Kitty Jaramillo.
Okay. Council member, I'm regressing. Commissioner Seaborn has 3 votes, so that is a majority, so he will serve as chair.
I think there were 4.
4? Oh, sorry, 4. I was writing and scribbling too quickly. 4, well, you still have a majority, how's that? So, and with that, you can take it from there.
Okay.
Chair Seaborn.
Madam Clerk, thank you. We'll now call for nominations for vice chair. And we'll open those up. And if you'd like to nominate someone or nominate yourself, you can go ahead and do that. And I'll start down here to my right with Member Jaramillo.
I would like to nominate Jody.
Thank you.
I would like to nominate myself.
Thank you, Mr. Lira. We'll go to Mr. Seminara.
No nomination.
Okay. And Member Vallejo.
I will stick with my nomination of Kitty Jaramillo.
Okay. We'll close nominations and we will go with, I guess, a vote. Do we need a vote?
We can do the same process since there's
Okay.
more than one nominee. So, Commissioner Jaramillo. Commissioner, what is your, for your?
Myself, yeah.
That's okay, you can say it. Commissioner Lira.
I vote for myself.
Commissioner Seaborn, Chair Seaborn.
Member Lira.
Commissioner Seminara.
James Lira.
And Commissioner Vallejo.
Kitty Jaramillo.
Okay. And Commissioner Seminara, if I'm doing my math right this time, has 3 votes. So you will be vice chair. So, and you will serve.
James
as-
Lira.
Sorry, I'm looking at you and thinking over here. Commissioner Lira will have 3 and serve as vice chair.
Okay. Thank you. I think that moves us on to item number 4, which would be at-large appointments. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. I believe you have a report that you're giving.
Correct. Thank you, Chair Seaborn. In your packets, I gave you a staff report on the at-large member appointments. City Council, when they formed this commission, decided to have 5 directly appointed members, which are you, and then the 5 of you would then pick from the remaining applications 2 more members to serve at large on the commission. I forwarded those applications to you, so you should have those. If you're, I know this is a little cold, but if you're ready to jump right in and make appointments tonight, you can, or if you needed a little more time to make decisions, maybe do an interview panel, we can do that also. But if you're ready to appoint, you are properly agendized to do that tonight.
All right. I will ask the committee, are they ready to appoint? Do they have people in mind that they feel that they can nominate tonight? I got a few heads nodding. Okay. We'll go ahead and move forward with that. Do we want to ask for both nominations from each person or just open up to nominations in general? And
You can open up nominations. We probably also should do public comment, which we didn't do on chair and vice chair because that was
Okay.
too focused, but we can cover all those at one if you like.
okay. Should we do that before we open the nominations?
I would suggest doing public comment first.
Very well. Then in that case, we'll open this up to public comments. If you'd like to speak on item 4, the at-large appointments, please come on up and say so now.
Sorry? Which mic should we use? Oh, the one in the corner.
Good morning. Good morning. Good evening. My name is Jane Rands, and I would like for the commission members to consider the area in which the at-large members may reside. I'm not I haven't analyzed where each of you live. I know it's somewhat of the area of the city has been covered, but as the city is lacking representation from downtown in our current districts, I would like to see, at a minimum, one member selected from what we would consider our downtown area, roughly from Raymond to Euclid, Golden Hills neighborhood down to the railroad tracks, roughly our downtown area. If that could be a consideration in your decision making, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wishing to speak? Do we have any online members while this gentleman's making his way forward?
While we have folks coming to the microphone in person, if anyone online would like to speak, just raise your hand and we'll get to you next.
Thank you.
Hi, Doug Cox, live in the city of Fullerton, and going along with what Jane had to say was that, when we look at the downtown, or districts, I should say, districts can have their own kind of conundrums, and I think that's why Jane came down, is how's that going to play and how does that look? Having looked at some of the folks who have sent in their applications, the one I kind of keyed in on, I've had dealings with him for a number of years, don't always agree with him, but I get his unvarnished truth. I get his honest service to Fullerton, and his thoughts are always about what's best for Fullerton. Even though sometimes he's an applicant for projects here, he still is always wondering what's the best for Fullerton. And I don't know of a better person who knows downtown than Tony Bushala. Some people love him, some people don't, but I find in any job that you do, you're going to have the Howard Cosell syndrome, right? But if you do that right, you pretty much come out with what we want: the collaboration, folks getting a fair look, being heard, and someone who cares about the community. And I think Tony would be a good choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members online?
And no hands raised
No
online.
hands raised. Okay. In that case, we'll close public comment, bring it back to the committee, and we'll, I guess, open it up for nominations for the 2 at-large appointments. If you have 2 names that you would like to nominate, you can do so at this time, or if you only have one name. So we'll open that up at this time.
I would like to nominate Tony Bushala.
Thank you. Any other nominations at this time?
I would like to nominate.
Oh, I'm sorry. We
Go
got
ahead, Kitty.
Okay.
It's all right.
member here.
I'd like to nominate Mike Rodriguez, District 2, and Amina Kazi, District 2.
I would like to nominate Sean Nelson.
Okay. Thank you. Any other nominations? All right, then in that
Oh,
case.
yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Excuse me, I was turning my microphone on. I would also like to nominate Amina Kazi,
Okay.
and I could also envision Mike serving on this committee, so I will second the nomination for Mike Rodriguez.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, I think we take these one at a time.
We could do that, individual votes on each person unless we get to 2 appointees before we get through the end of the list.
Okay. Why don't we do that? I will try to take these in the order that I received them. We'll start with Tony Bushala.
Okay, and because we're also online, I'm going to do a roll call vote. if
That's fine.
Okay. I'm sorry, Katie, but if it's easiest, we'll just keep starting on your end, so go alphabetical.
Nay.
Commissioner Aramillo,
Nay.
Commissioner Lira,
Yes.
Commissioner Chair Seaborn,
Aye.
Commissioner Seminara,
Aye.
and Commissioner Vallejo.
Nay.
Okay, so that'd be 3-2 in favor of Mr. Bushala being on the commission. So where are you? You're over there. You could actually come join the dais if you like. So
I've never sat up there before.
I don't know if I put all the materials up there, but
There's no lightning.
one down. There you go.
Thank you.
Does
do
he
your
need to be
oath of
s-
office.
Does he need to be sworn
You
in
know
for
what?
the
We
oath?
probably should real quick.
All right.
Can I just suggest that we do both of the new ones at
Okay.
once? Yeah.
Good idea.
And so,
You don't want to hear me say it twice?
so then Mr. Bushala would not vote on the nominations, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Next, I believe, was Mike Rodriguez.
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Jaramillo is yes. Commissioner Lyra?
Nay.
Chair Seaborn?
No?
Commissioner Seminara?
No.
And Commissioner Vallejo?
Yes.
Okay, that one fails 2-3.
Thank you. Next, we'll consider Amina Kazi.
Yes.
She's talking faster than I can type. Okay, Commissioner Jaramillo is yes. Commissioner Lyra?
Nay.
Chair Seaborn?
No?
Commissioner Seminara?
No.
And Commissioner Vallejo?
Yes.
And that one also fails 2-3.
Okay. Move on to the final nominee, Mr. Sean Nelson.
Commissioner Jaramillo?
No.
I should be calling you Vice Chair Lyra.
Yes.
Chair Seaborn?
Aye.
Commissioner Seminara?
Yes.
And Commissioner Vallejo?
No.
So that is a 3-2. And Mr. Nelson actually is online with his hand up. We know he's here. I'm going to promote you, Commissioner Nelson, over to panelist so you can actually participate in the meeting now, as soon as you accept it. There he is. Okay. Now we can oath of office for both of you. There he is. So I'm going to come back over to the mic and make it official and have one more round of the oath of office.
So should they stand and raise their right hand?
They should. I don't know if Commissioner Nelson can stand. He might be out of camera range, but he can raise his right hand. And if you want to unmute yourself, we can say, I state your name,
Tony Bushala,
I, Sean Nelson,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support
that I will
and
support
defend
and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the
the
United States
Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the
and the
Constitution
Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all
against all
foreign and
enemies,
domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will have true faith
that I
and
will bear
allegiance
true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the
to
Constitution,
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation
that I take this obligation freely
without mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll send an oath your way to get a signature on because I didn't have them prepared for this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and congratulations, new commissioners. At this time, we'll move to item 5, which is introduction, orientation, and meeting schedule. I suppose I should open that up for public comments, see if anybody wants to talk about it.
I just had, again, this is Jane Rands. I had one concern from the schedule that was published initially, that I understand from the city clerk was only preliminary. But what I understand from the state code for the new redistricting rules as of 2019, that the first meeting should not already have a map available. So I guess, and I have a question, would the first real meeting with the meeting following this with the demographer be considered the first meeting versus this being the first meeting? And just Lucinda could probably answer that question. Thank you.
I'll turn it over to the clerk.
This is the first meeting. It is not the first public hearing. So there will be, actually, we can just get into the timeline right now if you're done with public
Are there
comment.
any
if you
comments
like.
online?
No one online.
Okay.
So in your agenda packet, I gave you the meeting schedule.
You know, I don't have that one
If you
up
need it,
here.
I can.
Okay, awesome. It was in the email, but I don't have a printed version of that, so I
Is that computer
apologize.
still up?
Public hearing here.
Let me pull it up real quick.
That would be good.
I probably got it electronically as well.
Regardless, that's a tentative schedule that you developed? Or does that have,
Relatively tentative, although it is pretty much the dates our demographer is available. So if we change anything, we'd have to check on their availability.
Nice. Thank you, John.
Why are you not opening? I'll pull up the agenda report. It's right in there. I just want to display there. I might need you to mouse through there first.
Not a problem.
Sorry about that delay. It's not pretty, but it's up there, so.
all right.
So tonight is your orientation meeting to go over a lot of the administrative and housekeeping kind of things that we need to do to get you running. You had options up there for November meetings in case you needed another date for appointments, but you seem to have dispensed with that very quickly tonight, so you don't need to be here in November. Now, December 15th is the first public hearing, and our demographer will be there to help with that. Our demographer is National Demographics Corporation. Some of you may know Doug Johnson. One of his staff is going to be here with us, Justin Levitt. Very knowledgeable, doing just about every other Orange County entity also right now, which is why his availability is a little limited. And every demographer right now is busy getting the folks with December deadlines done, like the county and the school boards and things like that. So they really aren't available to get rolling until later in December. But then we will kick it off and go full speed from there. We also want to do 2 workshops as part of the process. I'll let you mull it over for a few minutes, but I'd like some input from you as the commission, whether you'd like the 2 workshops. Will be off-site from here. I don't know how many of you were in our districting process a few years ago, but we held off-site workshops in different parts of the city. So we'll do one on a weeknight with the date to be determined when we find a location, and one that'll be on a Saturday. We're hoping somewhere in the south part of town, like Richmond Center or maybe Independence Center, somewhere where we can find a space to do it. And we would like your input on whether you would like those to be actual workshops where the commission's hands-off and it's just the community there doing the work, or if you'd like to make them formal commission meetings, we can do that also. So we can get back to that before the end of this item if you want some time to mull that over. So that would be, the Saturday one is Saturday, January 29th, because we knew we had our demographer ready to go on that date on a Saturday. And we're still, again, the weeknight will be depending on location and availability, but sometime in January. February 23rd will be the second public hearing with this commission. Again, that'll be here in the chambers. And then you get to turn it over to City Council, and they will do their public hearings on March 8th and March 29th, which are non-council Tuesdays usually, so it'll be nice to have just those nights to focus on the redistricting issues. And then if council decides to adopt an ordinance, I think they can just do a resolution, but if they want to go the ordinance route, that'll be adopted in April. And then the deadline for maps for anybody with the November election is April 17th. And then November 8th will be election day. So it's almost right around the corner. I better get ready for elections. So are there any questions on the schedule?
So it sounds like the 2 primary dates that we need to keep in mind is January 29th and February 23rd?
And December 15th.
Yeah,
Well,
sorry,
if you want, the 2 public hearings are December 15th and February 23rd. Those are definitely commission meetings. Now, I'd like direction from you whether you'd like to hold one or both of the workshops as a formal meeting or let the community have at it. our city attorney will explain in a few minutes. And you may want to wait till after the Brown Act presentation if you want to, so you understand the ins and outs of what you can and can't do if you hold a formal meeting and if you don't. So.
Yeah, I would continue this item until after that, and we can pick it up at the end of the agenda and address that.
And we do have one more commission meeting in December if you want to wait and decide then, but we can still lock down the place and time.
Okay.
So that's the schedule. Let's see, what else? We took care of the oath. We took care of the timeline. We don't need a November date. You also will be getting an email if you haven't gotten one yet, because you will be asked to file a Form 700, which is shorthand for a Fair Political Practices Commission Statement of Economic Interest. So don't try to say that 10 times fast, but it's just disclosure of any conflicts that you might have while you're serving on the commission. So you'll get that in your email soon, because we do electronic filings. And that should be it as far as the housekeeping things. Unless you have
Okay.
any questions for me about the process.
Is that going to conclude orientation?
That will be that part of that item, yes.
Okay.
And we have no public comments on Zoom. I think I already said that, but just in case.
All right, so we'll move on to item number 6.
Okay, just remind me how to make the thing.
F5. And keep clicking through it. Here we go. I know, gotta
Mr.
get rid of
Chair,
that
members of the
information.
commission, Kimberly Hall Barlow, Assistant City Attorney. I'm here to give you a very brief, and this is nowhere near the 2-hour presentation I normally do on these issues. This is meant to be very concise and neat. I will always be available if you have questions about the conflict, the Brown Act, or the Public Records Act. But this is intended to be a summary for you, okay? So the Ralph M. Brown Act is found at Government Code Section 54950 et sec, which just means and after. And what it primarily requires is that the public agency actions and deliberations be taken openly, and that deliberations be conducted openly. This was passed in the 1950s, and it was essentially designed to prevent the deal-making in the back room with cigars. The smoke-filled back room, right? And all meetings of a legislative body must be open and public. We'll talk about what a meeting is, because that's important. Who is subject to the Brown Act? All legislative bodies are subject to the Brown Act, and that includes, I should say, local legislative bodies. The legislature is not. The governing body of a local agency, including the city council, and governing bodies of other entities created by state or federal statute, housing authorities, joint powers authorities, and the like. And commissions, committees, or boards that are created by formal action of the governing party, that body, that includes you. Planning commission, personnel board, those types of bodies. And it can also include private corporations under some circumstances, which don't really affect you. So what is a meeting? This is technically a definition of a meeting. A congregation, any congregation of a majority of the members of the legislative body in the same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate upon any item within their jurisdiction. The concern and what the Brown Act is designed to guard against is the fact that you can actually have a meeting without that happening anymore. There are a number of ways, including informal discussions, telephone conversations for discussing items in advance, serial meetings, which I'll explain, even disclosing ex-parte communications prior to public hearing items, and emails, texts, blogs, and social networking sites. The legislature is a little far behind in catching up with some technology changes. There's a recent bill we'll talk about. But a serial meeting is essentially where a majority of a legislative body, through individual communications, acts or gains information collectively. An effort to gain consensus or to share information, that is all considered a potential serial meeting. Now, staff will send you communications, one-way communications. Likewise, you'll probably receive communications from constituents, people who are interested in the process of this commission and what it will do. That is fine. Those individual contacts are fine. And you're going to see when we send you items, that it's going to say, please don't reply all, or words to that effect. Because that can be, obviously, that can be a communication back to a majority of the body. So there are different ways that serial meetings can occur. They can occur in what you would normally think of as a serial, i.e. one person talks to the next person, who talks to the next person, who talks to the next person. Or they could be what they call the spokes of a hub, where there's one person as the hub, and different people are communicating with that single individual and sharing with each other the viewpoints of other members of the commission. That is a Brown Act violation just as much as each person communicating down the line would be. So it's very important that if you talk about the business of this commission, within the jurisdiction of this commission, that it not be with more than a minority of the members of your commission. You have a 7-member body, therefore you cannot speak to more than 2 other people, because that would then constitute 3. If you talk to 3, you'd be communicating with the majority of the commission, including yourself. So it's very important not to violate the Brown Act. So again, individual conversations or contacts are not considered Brown Act violations. However, I want to caution you that, for example, if you're contacted by someone who has spoken to another commission member, if they start to tell you about their conversation with that other commission member or what that other commission member said to them, please ask them not to do that. You don't want to inadvertently get that kind of information that could cause a Brown Act violation. Also, you may be attending conferences, social events, or council meetings, just by way of example. That's fine as long as you don't discuss the issues that are within your body's jurisdiction, that is the redistricting. Likewise, you can attend other meetings of legislative bodies as long as you don't discuss those issues, your legislative issues. Be careful about emails. It's very easy to violate the Brown Act simply by hitting reply all. We discourage that at all costs. Be very, very careful. In addition, emails and other written communications are potentially public records acts. I would recommend that you consider every communication that you have relating to this commission a public record. The sole exception might be communications that you receive from legal counsel. And even then, under certain circumstances, those could be deemed public records. So it's very important that you think about the fact that those records have to be maintained. Don't delete records. Don't forward them on to other members of the commission. If you have a communication that you receive from a member of the public that you think should be shared with the entire commission, please send it to staff, and we will communicate to the entire commission and make sure that that record is available to the public, because it will be required to be. I don't know if we're going to be having email addresses specifically for the commissioners.
No, we aren't.
Okay.
But I
So-
try to remember to BCC you on emails too, so you can't reply all.
Right.
Keep you out of trouble.
Do you have a blanket committee or commission email that the public can send questions to and that sort of thing?
Right now it's the city clerk's office, but I'm working with IT to see if we can do a specific one like we had with the first round of districting.
I think that would be good if that's available. Make a one-stop shop for the public.
Absolutely. So just remember that your phone or your computer, your laptop, your iPad, whatever communication device you use, to the extent that it includes public records, is accessible to me, to the clerk. If the city clerk gets a Public Records Act request for communications on your devices related to this body's tasks, you are going to have to either produce them or provide to her a statement to the effect that you don't have any. So please don't delete those. That's very, very important.
Can I chime in one sec too? I'll also ask that when you leave service on the commission, if you have any records in your possession that aren't duplicates of something we already have in the city, if you could leave them with me also, because those are records for at least 2 years. So, and I don't want to come track you down in 18 months.
Right.
If I could pose a what if, and maybe it's a problem or a solution to that problem, and that is to always copy the city clerk on any of those communications, and then really I don't need to worry about that. It's in her email. It would be part of the communication.
Right. That's true. Even though with duplicates, we still have to follow a certain process. So the original of a communication, let's say it comes from a member of the public to you, that's the original.
Sure.
And so we either need to have some record and documentation of the communication, including who it came from, the time it was received, essentially the metadata, right? The underlying stuff, as well as the communication as part of our records. And once we have that, then you can delete it from your phone or whatever. So if you copy the clerk on communications, that's great. Then she'll always have that. But for those communications that come directly to you, then we're going to need to make sure that we retain copies with the appropriate information about when it was sent and so on. Okay?
Thank you.
Texting is similar problems with email, except that texts don't have all the goodies with them, right? You don't have something that you can print right now that shows who it was from and when it was received and so on. So screenshots or whatever, those kinds of things, I would discourage you from texting about this, because you will find you will be producing way too many documents. So if you try to confine it to email, it'll be easier for you, because then you'll have the record that says who it came from and who it was sent to and the time and date right there in the same place. Okay? And again, serial meetings can occur even during a meeting or before a meeting using cell phones or other electronic communication devices. So one important rule is to avoid sending or receiving texts or emails about an agenda item, particularly to or from the public during a meeting, to or from each other during the meeting. And if for some reason you have a declared conflict, which we'll talk very briefly about tonight, then it'll be very important that you not communicate about any issues where you have a particular conflict. Social media. Oh, that didn't come out very dark, did it? Can you read that? I can barely read it. AB 992, which was passed in 2020, finally addressed social media. We didn't really have any legislation about that previously. It essentially prohibits officials that are on the same legislative body from discussing among themselves official business on any social networking platform, Twitter, Facebook. There's so many now, it's crazy. But any social media, and that includes posting a comment on social media posts or sites, or even responding to another member's post with an emoji, a like, a thumbs up, anything at all. So stay away from each other's social media, at least around the topic of redistricting, okay? All right, posting requirements. Under the Brown Act, we are required to post meeting agendas for your regular meetings at least 72 hours before those, or any adjourned regular meeting. Any special meeting that might be called would require 24 hours notice. We're going to try to establish a meeting schedule so that we won't be having to call any special meetings, hopefully. And also, the meeting agendas have to be posted on our website. They have to be on the homepage, be retrievable, downloadable, indexable, searchable, and available for free. The posting requirements require that we identify the time and the location of all meetings. We include a brief general description of each item, including any closed session items, which you probably don't have to worry about. And we're not allowed to hold special meetings for discussion of agency executive compensation or perks, also something you don't have to worry about probably. We cannot take action on any item that is not appearing on the posted agenda. There are limited exceptions. Hard to imagine that any of these will apply to this commission. Well, not any of them, but you could, for example, can respond to brief comments. I doubt that we would be having a statutorily defined emergency for this commission at least, or an item on which we need immediate action. There might conceivably be something, let's say the legislature changed the deadline for when we had to have our maps final, and we might need to bring that onto the agenda to change your meeting schedule, just by way of example. That would be something that we would be allowed to bring onto the agenda with a 2/3 vote, as long as we explain and find the need for action, immediate action, and the item couldn't be posted on the agenda because we didn't know. So hopefully that won't happen. But you can ask questions of staff and make brief reports, and you can also request to agendize items for a future meeting. Closed sessions are very limited. We don't expect those to happen there, but they're only permissible by statute, and disclosure of information learned in closed session is illegal. The consequences of Brown Act violations can be very serious, even for commissions or committees where you are advisory or recommendatory in nature. Your decision can be nullified, or a decision that's based on a Brown Act violation. There are criminal sanctions for intentional violations. Happens rarely, but it does happen. And it brings very negative media attention. So we try to avoid those at all costs. The Public Records Act, again, we've talked a little bit about public records, but the Public Records Act requires openness and availability of public records. That is essentially all writings that are used in the conduct of city or agency business, anything that is prepared, owned, used, or retained by us, regardless of its form. So even if we only ever had it in an electronic form, even if it was only ever data or metadata, it's something that we're required to preserve for limited periods of time, sometimes forever. Usually the minimum is 2 years, with certain exceptions, which I'll explain. So the obvious things: agendas, documents from public meetings, reports, letters, contracts, photographs, videotapes, and tape recordings, electronic data that we've already talked about a little bit. We have to make those records available for inspection at all times during regular business hours. For example, your Form 700 you'll find needs to be at the counter in the city clerk's office, and anybody that wants to can walk in and ask for a copy of it or ask to look at it today, and we have to provide it to them today. There are also other records, especially more substantive requests, where we get a request. It is supposed to tell us what identifiable record they want, and we're allowed to charge direct costs of duplication, although most people don't want paper copies anymore. So in the Brown Act, it requires that the request be focused and specific. However, we're supposed to help someone if they haven't identified a specific document, or they ask for information that isn't necessarily in one document. We're supposed to help them determine how it is that we can get that information to them in some form or other. So we have 10 days to notify someone whether or not we will comply with the request. We can get a possible 14-day extension, usually only if it requires extensive review, legal review, redaction, other things like that. If we deny access to records, we have to identify why we're denying that access, under what provisions of the government code, and who is responsible for that denial. And again, the public has the right to assistance in identifying records, in overcoming a basis for denial, and in identifying information technology involved so that they can access the public records. So I've got some exempt records: preliminary drafts, notes, memoranda, records regarding pending litigation, financial data, trade secrets, communications from legal counsel. Again, those have to be communications about legal matters, not just your regular everyday communications. It does need to be related to legal advice. Security information, complaints and investigations. You don't have to worry about architectural drawings, but we do from time to time. Personnel records, and certain other information. And then there's the catch-all that is discouraged from use, let me say. But in that case, so in terms of preliminary notes, drafts, memoranda, what I would tell you is that the things you can readily discard, that you don't have to keep. If the clerk sends you an email and says, "Are you available on such and so a date?" and you respond to that, that isn't the kind of communication that we're concerned about. She's going to have copies of that communication. That's what's the right word for that? It's not really a substantive communication, let's put it that way, and so we don't need to keep those. If staff works on drafts and notes and so on, those things can be disposed of as long as we don't routinely keep them. Once we decide we're going to keep them, then we have to keep them. You will perhaps make notes on items for yourself. Those that reflect your deliberative process, you may retain. If a request is made for them and a determination is made that they have to be released, so those are things that you should keep, unless it's you squiggling and doodling and making notes about your grocery list or those kinds of things. You understand what I'm saying? The difference between something that specifically reflects your deliberative process, what you're thinking about the matters that are before you as a body, those are privileged and could be retained. But things that are just scribbles and notes that you don't need to keep, you can dispose of those, all right? We are required to disclose all emails that contain information relating to public business, even if they are on your private devices. And so it's very important that you keep track of those. I would recommend that to the extent you're communicating via email, maybe establish a separate folder or something like that so that it's easy for you to find the emails that specifically relate to redistricting. You won't want to be going through 2 years' worth of records to find them. And probably easiest if you have those that you produce them right up front and then you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Some of our committee members actually create a separate Gmail account or separate email, whatever platform of your choosing.
Definitely recommend that.
Yeah.
Makes life a lot easier.
Very, very much easier for you and for us, believe me. The last thing I want to do is ever go through anybody's emails. Sometimes I have to do it. I'd prefer not. Enforcement. A court can order production of records that are improperly withheld, and a court is required to award costs and reasonable attorney's fees to a prevailing plaintiff. And again, it's very bad media attention and just bad for the city generally if we have to go that route. So there's 2 key takeaways from this part, and I'll talk briefly about conflicts and then let Lucinda speak of it. All the meetings are open and public, and every person is permitted to attend meetings of legislative bodies, except when the Brown Act authorizes otherwise. Behind-the-scenes communications with the majority are prohibited. That's the important takeaway, number 1. Number 2, the people have a right to access to the conduct of their business, including their meetings and their documents. Those documents have to be open to public scrutiny, and records have to be produced in short time with few exceptions. Anything that is required to be retained will have a 2-year minimum retention period for your information. Okay? And then I don't have slides on conflicts, but I can give you a quick rundown. There are a number of different kinds of conflicts. You'll see when you fill out your Form 700s that we're looking for interests in business entities, in real property, in sources of income. Are they all categories filers?
Yes.
Okay. So you're gonna be all categories filers, which means that all of the categories that are found in the Form 700 are required to be filed for you. So that's real property interest, business interest, sources of income, and gifts. So you might have things like stock; those are sources of income. You'll be required to disclose specific stock ownership, for example. Certain things in that category don't have to be disclosed, and you'll get some guidance with the forms themselves, like mutual funds, for example, unless they're self-guided, things like that. So, but basically, all of your financial interests that have any significance. And there are thresholds for business entities. It's a $2,000 threshold. For real estate interests, it's a $2,000 threshold. There are thresholds for gifts, both in terms of accepting gifts and reporting requirements for gifts. Every gift in the amount of $50, except for certain exceptions like family gift exchanges and the like, those have to be disclosed. The maximum amount of a gift that you can accept from any individual in any year, and that's an interested party, is $520.
It changes every year. I've lost track.
Every other year, yes.
Yeah.
It changed in January. So it's $520. And then there are reporting thresholds that you'll see for various stock interests. You have to say, well, is it less than 10,000? Is it between, is it less than 50 or less than 100 or more than 100, something like that. Your interest in your personal residence typically doesn't have to be disclosed, although We still will look at that for purposes of other kinds of conflicts, boundary conflicts, but it's not a financial conflict that we'd be looking at there. There, we would just be looking at distance. So for distance from your residence. Now, it typically doesn't apply in redistricting context, because obviously you're all residents of the city. But if we start getting really, really close to your property line, please let us know so we can assess that for a potential conflict. In general terms, it's at least within 500 feet is deemed to be a conflict, and between 500 and 1,000 could be a conflict. Over 1,000 would not be considered a conflict. Okay? So there's way more to conflicts of interest than that. I'm going to add one more, and that is it's not a financial conflict, but there's two others. One is Government Code Section 1090, which is a prohibition on any contracts. It probably isn't going to apply to you, but it's important that you be aware of it. It prohibits you from having any role in any contract in which you are engaged with the city. And then the issue of bias. So if you have personal bias in some particular thing, somebody wants to draw a line right down the middle of your house or something, those are the kinds of things that we would talk about. Again, I don't expect it to be an issue for any of you, but if you at any point feel like there is a bias issue that may be at least alleged against you or may be raised, feel free to raise that with us and we'll talk about it with you. All right? And with that, I'll turn it back over to Lucinda. She'll give you the skinny on the Form 700.
Yeah, and on the Form 700, Kim did a pretty good job covering it all for you. Don't panic, it's not as hard as it sounds. And you only have to report things that are a conflict with your work with the commission. So if you have stock in something like Coca-Cola or AT&T, unless we're drawing a line around an AT&T or a Coca-Cola building, we're probably okay. So, but if you have rental property, that might be something you want to declare. And there's nothing wrong with over-declaring. If you want to list every stock you have, you can do that, although it's not encouraged. It's just the things that are within the purview of this commission. So I usually tell people it's a good time to be poor and have no friends, because then you have nothing to report. So that's usually my case. If I could just add one more thing also, you'll notice we do have Zoom running for this meeting. We are the governor had an executive order in place until about a month ago that allowed the commission members and council to participate remotely. That executive order has ended, but there is now a state bill on the books that will let the city continue to allow legislative body members to participate in these meetings virtually as long as council keeps declaring the findings every 30 days. So I don't know how long council will do that, but it's on the books right now. Although if you can be here in person, this is probably one of those groups that we're going to be practically getting out crayons sometimes and drawing maps, and there's a lot of in-person interaction, so it might be, if you can make it here in person, it might be an easier way to conduct your meeting, but for now, Zoom is an option if you need it. But since we go into next spring, I'm not sure how long it'll be an option for you to participate. We will try to keep Zoom up and running for the public, however, to make public comments, because the Brown Act doesn't prohibit that in any way. So it's a nice extra bonus for people to participate that can't be here. And that was all I had on that.
I don't know, Mr. Chair, if you wanted to see if there was any public comment on that presentation.
Yeah, I suppose we should, because that might be a Brown Act violation if we don't, right? Yes, so we'll open up public comments on item 6. If you want to talk about it, come on up. I see a hand going up. Maureen?
You want to take the Zoom comments while I'm working my way around?
Sure, we'll see if there's any Zoom commenters out there, and I think Ms. Rands, she has a question or comment. All right.
I was just curious, since you were including everything in that presentation, whether you anticipate any circumstance in which this body would have a closed-door meeting.
Personally, I don't, no.
I think Maureen is still making her way around to the other door. And did you see any comments online? Nothing online. All right, well, we'll give her a moment to make her way to the front.
Oh. Oh, that's good. Oh, it's awfully muffled. Oh, that's okay. I hope everyone will be able to understand me. I have two questions. Number one, are the 25% of the population going to be allowed to participate in the off-site comments, i.e. a voicemail, and also the city channel, to post the meetings on the city channel so we can have, and also to have the a voicemail available so we can pick up the phone and ask, I need some information on this, or to make comments. Is that going to be allowed?
Thank you. I don't have an answer for that, but I'll turn it over to the clerk, who may.
The plan is to, depending on where we are, but hopefully the technology will be there that we can broadcast and have Zoom. I think we're set up for that, but I don't want to 100% promise it until I know the exact location.
Well, I was going to say, I think it all depends on the location. So if we have a good location with the technology, we can. All right.
Oh, excuse me, go ahead.
If you have a question, please use the microphone so that it's recorded correctly.
Oh, okay, thanks. I am back. Lucinda, you answered part of that question, but what about the setting up the voicemail with information and with meeting information, and so we can make comments or ask any one of the commissioners to call us on a specific item?
To allow people to call into the meetings?
No, not to the meeting.
Just a general voicemail that
Well,
people can call with
like-
questions or comments?
Like he was saying, Commissioner Seaborn was saying about the, didn't you say a general
Email?
email? Yeah, it would be the same thing, a general voicemail.
It would probably be my number, but yes.
Will you have a recording so we can leave? Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
She
Yeah,
does.
we do.
It's all set. Just call the clerk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't know if that was going to be a separate one because of the fact that she is so busy all the time.
Yep, she
Yeah.
is.
So that's why I thought maybe a separate one would be easier to handle.
Except that she would have to respond to all those.
We'll probably have to go to the main clerk number. That way
Yeah.
someone at least you can talk to a human. Hopefully they'll have an answer for you. So.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any online questions at this time?
We have no online attendees.
Okay, so we'll move on to item 7, which is public comment on non-agenda items.
Hi, good evening. My name is Amina Kazi. I'm a Fullerton resident. Thank you all for your service here tonight and to the interpreters as well. I just wanted to draw your attention to a letter that was sent to all of you and the city council members this afternoon, authored by the ACLU, the Orange County Congregation Community Organization, Orange County Environmental Justice Coalition, and RA for Justice, about concerns about the redistricting process so far as presented at the time of authorship. I wanted to read a couple paragraphs in my remaining time here. In 2015, the city transitioned to bi-district elections and drew the existing map. At the time, traditional redistricting principles were discretionary. The city could completely ignore these principles and place as much or as little weight on other factors, including undemocratic factors such as protecting incumbents. Excuse me. In 2019, however, the California legislature passed the Fair Maps Act, which requires, among other things, that the city maintain communities of interest where this does not conflict with higher ranked criteria. We are extremely concerned that the city declined to establish an independent redistricting commission and that a former council member sits on the advisory commission. The council and the commission must keep in mind that the Fair Maps Act prohibits you from considering relationships with incumbents or political candidates when assessing communities of interest. We urge you to follow state and federal law and adopt lines that protect communities of interest, not lines that protect incumbents or ensure that certain candidates can be elected in the future. We encourage the city to continue planning the process by, amongst other things, scheduling more than 4 hearings and workshops across the city, scheduling a series of workshops and public hearings before releasing draft maps, updating the redistricting webpage to include all required information, committing to offer interpretations in Spanish, Korean, Chinese, Vietnamese, and Cham, exploring the need to create Section 2 compliant districts, and working with the public and community-based organizations to develop a robust public outreach and education plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers at this time? All right, hearing none, we'll close public comments and move back to our schedule. And I believe the clerk had a couple of questions, and she was waiting on us to receive the Brown Act information to find out if we wanted to make those formal meetings or not. Now those
Yes.
are the outreach meetings.
Thank you, Chair. These are the meetings in January. There is one on a weeknight that is to be determined based on facility availability, and one on Saturday, January 29th. And just wanted to see if you'd like to keep those as just true workshops without a formal commission meeting, or would you like to set those as a commission meeting?
Turn it over to the committee and talk about that. Anybody have a preference?
I was on the previous committees for the redistricting, well, when we got district voting here in Fullerton, and then we drew up the maps. And attended all the town hall meetings in all the sections of the city. And I feel like, I think the residents that show up for those meetings will feel more comfortable just being as a community there and sharing their concerns and you know, their advice and what they feel how the maps should be drawn, and with their suggestions also. I don't want them to feel pressured the way people can feel pressured when they come here to speak or whatever. So I move that we make them non-formal, the town hall meetings.
Thank you. If that's a motion, there would need to be a second.
I'll second that, and I agree with Commissioner Jaramillo's consensus there that it is probably better to be in a more informal meeting, making the residents who attend in much more comfortable.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Anything else to talk about with that? No? All right, we'll take a roll call vote on that.
Okay, Commissioner Jaramillo.
Aye.
This is to do the informal workshop setting. Sorry, I should have clarified the
Informal
motion was for.
workshops, correct.
Vice Chair Lira. Aye. Chair Seaborn.
Aye.
Commissioner Seminara.
Aye.
Commissioner Bushala.
Aye.
Commissioner Vallejo. And Commissioner Nelson, I see you there with your hand up also. Did you have something to say?
Please list me as an aye. Just a reminder, because of what we just went through with the Brown Act, one of the challenges of an informal meeting is some of us might be anxious to go and hear. And of course, if a majority of us show up at the meeting, that creates other problems. So then it becomes a sort of a contest of, well, who gets to go if not a majority? We'll work that out, I'm sure. But it's a good idea to have the workshops. It does become a challenge if a majority of the current panel shows up.
Yes.
All right.
So that
thank
passes 7-0. And to that point, I will add that we are going to try our best to record, broadcast, stream something these workshops, so you could actually enjoy your Saturday from afar and still watch it on your phone if you want to. So that might take care of some of your quorum concerns.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other commission members, staff reports, communications?
Just a quick question and to Sean's.
Is your mic on?
Oh, we'll get you trained. Here I go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just to Sean's point that he raised, would it be fruitful to have more than 2 informal meetings whereby commissioners would not be in violation of the Brown Act and could attend community meetings?
I think one of the things that we could do is just make sure that maybe if you're interested in going, maybe we draw straws and those people can go if there's that much interest. Otherwise, yeah, we'd have to have multiple meetings and somehow divide it up amongst us.
Would that also then allow for more community input?
Well, the more meetings, the more input, so they kind of go hand in hand. Right now, we're talking about 2 community meetings that are somewhat informal and a couple of public meetings that are formal. Is that correct?
4 public hearings total
Yeah.
between you and city council.
Yeah.
And if I could, Mr. Chair, you can attend these. The difficulty where the Brown Act comes in is where you're interacting with other members, or where you're communicating, say you're standing there talking to a constituent, excuse me, and you can be overheard by another commission member. So it's always wise to try to avoid having a majority at any particular meeting. But if you all wanted to go and be in person and watch the people interact, you could. I don't know if that would, change the feel of the
dynamic,
place. I mean, I think that your motion was well taken, and obviously the commission approved. So it is somewhat difficult because you do want to get that input. You can be assured that staff will be recording and taking notes, and the demographer will be there taking that input in order to try to help define what those communities of interest are and feed that back to you in reports. So
I guess legally, we're members of the public, we can attend those, but it's a question of our interaction and the comments that we make. So going and receiving the information and simply being reserved and quiet, not a problem. But if you start steering discussions or proposing ideas and other committee members are there, then you have a problem.
right. And just one other point, are we going to have the mapping tool?
Yes, we will have the mapping
Okay.
tool.
So one of the nice things is there will be a lot of information online, as well as having these meetings where people can read about what the criteria are and what a community of interest is, and they could look at and even draw their own version of maps to submit. So that'll be a very useful thing for all of you to have, for the public to be able to provide.
Great, thank you. Any other comments, questions, communications from the commission?
Quick clarification with respect to Ms. Jane Rand's comment about representation amongst the committee. I live in District 2. I believe Mr. Bushell does as well. And I'd like to hear from the rest of the members on what district they're in.
I think for those of us that know which district we're in, I'm in 3, barely.
And we know Commissioner Jaramillo's in 4 because she says it at every council meeting.
District 1.
District 2.
So
Thank you.
fairly diverse. I think we're missing, what, 3?
5.
5.
And I'll just note that out of all the applications we got for the commission, I believe there was only one applicant from District 5, so.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I
yes,
have a
Member
question.
Jaramillo.
I'm just curious, why are we only having 2 town hall meetings, 2 community meetings, rather than try to have one meeting in each district?
That was the recommendation of our demographer. We could try to do 4. Again, we are going to have to find times and dates and places and staff availability to do those. But if that's the direction the commission would like to go, we could look into options of doing more.
I just feel like 2 is minimal for our whole city, you know? Because I just remember all the town halls, when we did it the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And, some there were 10, some there were 25, and some there were only 5,
we had
so
4,
it
I
just
think.
depended on what section of the city you were in. And
Yeah, the section,
I don't
the
know,
time,
I feel
the
like 2 is
evening,
a
or the-
little bit, 3 would make me feel better. 5 would be great, but, I get it. I mean, I know there's a time crunch. I know all of that, but I just feel like 2 is minimal. I don't know. I don't know how everybody else feels, but.
Thank you. All right.
I feel like I'd like to also see more meetings. I think, as Chairperson Seaborn also mentioned, time variations, location, in order to make this process as equitable as possible. That could be, I think, something that could be very, very beneficial in helping us in this advisory capacity that we're in, as well as the council. And I would also be more comfortable with more than 2 meetings, just in order to have as much voice and representation as possible in this process.
Okay,
Can we make the motion?
sure, we're still talking about it. Meeting's still in progress.
Okay, I make the motion that we arrange for one more meeting and have a total of 3 community meetings.
Would you like that one to be informal or formal?
Informal.
Okay, so the motion is to have one more additional meeting that is informal.
Do you have any preference where you'd like it held?
Well, I don't know yet because I don't know where the other two are being
Generally,
held.
the first one will be somewhere District 4 or 5, if you know the map well enough. Probably District 4, if we can find a location. I kept hearing the school district office as a suggestion for our other meeting. That'll probably be our weeknight meeting.
I would just defer to staff to look at the calendar, work with the demographer, find a date, time, location that works, and then report back to us what that is. And
Okay.
I think if, as members, we have a preference for that it, we're missing something that needs to be at a specific time or a specific night, we can relay that back to staff and see what accommodations can
And
be
if you
made.
think of any great locations that are also ADA accessible that you would like to recommend, you have my email. I'm always looking for suggestions.
All right. So there is a motion and a second, I believe I was hearing.
Sure, I will second that.
Okay, a motion and a second. You want to take a roll call vote?
Commissioner, where am I? Jaramillo.
Aye.
Vice
Aye.
Chair Lira. Chair Seaborn.
Aye.
Commissioner Seminara.
Aye.
Commissioner Bushala.
Aye.
Commissioner Vallejo.
Aye.
And Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
7-0.
Great. All right. Sounds good. At this time, we will adjourn the meeting until our next one, which is December 15th. And time and location, I think, are to be determined, or do you already
It'll
have
be
that?
here in City Council chambers, and I believe it says 6:30.
6:30 here at Council Chambers, December 15th. All right, with that, we are adjourned. Good night.